Mic check. Mic check. Okay, I think we're back again. Apologies for the sound. I hope now it's better. Thank you to Mr. Cutsy there for letting me know that the sound wasn't good. Please keep a check on the sound because I can't hear this unless I kind of play back at myself what's going on. So somebody needs to tell me if the sound is good. So otherwise, I don't know if the sound is good. So let me just replay it here so you can hear me. We're back again. Apologies for the sound. Sound does still sound a bit dodgy. Let me adjust this sound for you. I'll make sure that the sound is right. You can hear me clearly. Let's try. One more sound check. One more sound check. One more sound check. I hope now that the sound is good. So adjust the sound for you. I'll make sure the sound is right. You can hear me clearly. One more sound check, one more sound check, one more sound check. Okay, so we'll start again. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to BWTM Sports. Thank you so much again for you, the viewers or viewer, Mr. Cutsy, for letting me know that my sound wasn't great. Also, I've been doing a whole show here. You know what I was saying, which would have been helpful. So thank you to you all for watching this now or later on. I know that you are tuning in to watch Arsenal play Man City. I kind of half wanted to do the commentary on it, but I don't know if I can do it yet. I'll have to build myself up to it. I'm not happy with Arsenal at the moment, the way they're playing, so I'll end up saying some things that are probably not very nice and probably wouldn't be helpful for me as an Arsenal supporter. So moving on. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever you are in the world today, and it doesn't matter where you are in the world, it's always nice to know where you're listening to or watching these videos. It's really inspirational when I hear people from across the globe sending emails or send text messages or maybe send me DMs and let me know how either they've watched the show from this part of the world or that part of the world, or they've been telling me how long they've been watching the show for, or when I first started doing videos. Wow. So thank you to all of you, much love, and I really do appreciate the love that I do get on the channel. It's appreciative. I appreciate it. I mean, next thing is very important announcement: BWTM Sports Group. If you're not already in the sports group, why not? On our Facebook page, the link is in the description box. Get there, click the link if you're on Facebook, become a member. It's free, and then you can leave comments about upcoming videos that maybe you'd like to see. Previous videos, things you'd like to see on the channel. It's a sports channel, not just boxing, and I hope to expand it in the next, 3 to 4, 6 months. Expand the channel, not just boxing, football, cricket, rugby, just expanding it so we can have a lot more sport. So something for you to, talk about on the channel and of course in the Facebook page, which I really appreciate. So get in there, and everybody that comes in, every single person that goes in, we give them a shout out by their name. So we appreciate the members we've got in the room. We've got a really great set of members in the room, from fighters to promoters to managers and to just fight fans like yourselves. So get in there, really appreciate. Okay, so today's video is going to be one of many videos, because I've got to do back-to-back videos. I'll do previews and breakdowns of various fights. I'm going to get it all done today, honestly, because I don't know when I'm going to get time to do it again, and I'm behind the 8 ball. So that's why I'm going to do 3 previews, Callum Smith, reviews, Callum Smith, Anthony Yarde, and Daniel Dubois. Dubois and Yarde are 2 fighters that I'm I'm kind of leaving till last because they're kind of like on the same level, and you'll see what I mean in a moment. Callum Smith. Last night, I did the live commentary on the show, and anybody who's been following this channel for an extensive amount of time will know my thoughts on Callum Smith. No fighter's a bum, let's get that straight. There's some guys that are better than others, but anybody who gets in the ring, does the training, gets in the ring, has the ultimate respect for. And, you know, although sometimes my verdicts and my analysis is pretty damning, it's never to insult the fighter. Please understand this. Or never to insult people inside the sport. But I have to make something clear. Because some of our commentators and some of our experts are a lot of backslapping and lots of false, what they call it, false praise, and not being honest, and conflicts of interest, meaning brothers commentating on brothers. Example, not exactly. Brothers commentate on brothers. You know, various channels, fighters assigned to that channel. So you always hear about what that fighter's doing rather than what the opposition is doing. So you don't really get a clear, fair analysis of a fight or fighter. Therefore, when I come along and I do my videos, it's like, oh, Ingram's hating. Not hating. It just sounds quite severe, some of the criticism, but it's honest. You know why so many people loved what Naz said the other night on ITV4? It's because he was honest. He was straight up. He was honest. Naz said what he said as if you were walking in a pub in Witherspoons and you were sitting down and overhear a conversation. That's exactly how people want to hear things. The truth. They want honesty. They don't want you pumping guys up and telling you guys are world class when they're not. And unfortunately, with this next person I'm about to talk about, I believe that he has been a product of that overhype or being sold too soon. Callum Smith, when he started his career, was, according to his promoter, the best prospect in world boxing. I never bought it. Then he was claimed to be the best super middleweight in the world, or one of the best leading super middleweights in the world. I didn't buy that either. To say you're the best prospect in boxing, there's a lot of boxers in America. There's a lot of boxers in Mexico. There's a lot of boxers across Europe. To say he's the best prospect in Europe, across the world, that is a real big statement. To say he's probably the best prospect in the UK, okay, you're narrowing it down, possibly. Might agree with you on that. At the time, best prospect in the world, that's a big, big, big statement. I mean, he wasn't an Olympic gold medalist. You know, so how you're the best prospect, I don't get that. I don't understand it. You know, Anthony Joshua would have been probably the best prospect in the UK at the time because of winning the Olympic gold and all this stuff that was around him. Anyway, I digress. So talking about Callum Smith, I've always said Callum Smith, decent jab, good body puncher. Those are things I saw about Callum Smith. But it was the Luke Blackledge fight and the fight he had against a former George Groves opponent. I can't remember the guy's name. And please, somebody will pull that up. George Groves' opponent. They had similar opponents. I couldn't remember what the guy's name is. But anyway, it was after those two fights, Luke Blackledge fight and that fight he had against the George Groves' opponent, I started to see things about Callum Smith I didn't particularly like. And those things have what I've made my basis of why I think Callum Smith is not as good as people have rated him out to be. I'm not slagging Callum Smith off now. I think he's a good boxer. Any guy that gets between the ropes, like I've said, and puts on a pair of gloves and is winning is doing something right. All right, but it's just the fact you get in the ring and you actually swap punches with someone. Full credit. I know what it takes. I've done it. It's not nice. It's hard, but I've never done it to the level that these guys have done it. So, you know what I mean? Respect to them. Let me just say that. Now, reasons I've said Callum Smith, I've got problems with Callum Smith at world level. First of all all the opportunities Callum Smith has had to fight at world level elite fighters, somehow or the other, he has got himself out of. Remember the Gale fight, the Ramirez fight, the Durrell fight. Every way, shape or form, the top elite, top 10 fighters, those fighters have not been a part of Callum Smith's development. In fact, maybe somebody in the top 20 that Callum Smith has fought, he hasn't. And for me, that's not good. And I'll tell you why it's not good. Because eventually, you have to fight somebody who's going to hit you back, who's going to hurt you, who's going to put you in situations where you're not going to have it all your way. Smith's knockouts have dried up since he's entered this tournament. He fought Eric Skoglund, I think we did the last interview with Skoglund before he unfortunately went into that coma, and I'm glad to hear now that Skoglund is on the way to recovery. So shout out to Eric there. And then he fought last night against Nicky Holskin. And Nicky Holskin, with all due respect, 13-0, come from a kickboxing background, and that's not a bad thing. A lot of our top fighters have come from a kickboxing background. That's not the point where I was dismissive of Nicky Holskin. Where I was dismissive of Nicky Holskin is if you read down the record and resume of what he was doing and what he achieved at the point before he got in the ring of Callum Smith, and you looked at Callum Smith's resume and the sort of guys Callum Smith had fought, even though Callum Smith had not operated at the highest level, he operated levels above Nicky Holskin at the level Holskin had been fighting at. So you look at what Holskin was doing at that level. You saw his head being rocked back all the time in certain fights, and not much head movement, and walking straight into punches and winging big right hands. I saw that, and I saw, well, Smith will keep him at the end of the jab, put the nice right hand through the middle, maybe bring a few uppercuts up, and I'll see him dropping that nice left hook to the body, or right hand to the body, and Holskin going over. That's what I could see around, like I said, six, 7 rounds. And, you know, Holskin proved to be very tough, very strong, and he boxed to a game plan. He actually boxed to the game plan. What was the game plan? The game plan, I would have probably said to him, you know what? Keep close to Smith. Get it when he gets to the ropes, rough him up. The only thing Holskin didn't do enough of it, and he didn't seize opportunities that were there with Smith. But Callum Smith, like I said, has a good jab, nice reach, nice tall. I'd like to see him control his distance better. But for me, the problems I have with Callum Smith, unfortunately, are numerous. Because you don't fight top quality opposition, and you're used to hitting guys and then falling over, when you now fight a guy that stands in front of you and takes your best shots, you end up now becoming a fighter that doesn't know what to do after you can't knock the guy out. So you haven't got the ability to switch things up, you know, try different things. You're doing the same thing over and over and over again. That's why Smith, when he's throwing the jab, sometimes when he throws the jab, he brings the hand down here, he's able to get caught with the right hand over the top. Not once, not twice, not even 3 times. It was numerous occasions. Holskin was able to wait for Smith, right hand over the top. I said it before the fight that Holskin had, and even in the preview, I said Holskin's got a big right hand, and he'll loop that right hand over Smith's left jab. The other thing about Smith, the left jab, for all the night, in all the commentary, I didn't see Callum Smith use one feint. I wanted to see Smith, when he's using the jab, feint. Let Holskin feint. Let Holskin think he's going to throw the jab. Let him come over the right hand, step back and crack him with a right hand while he's coming in. Let him onto the shot. Bring him onto the shot. I didn't see Callum Smith set any traps whatsoever. So Smith would just jab, jab. The jab would come at the same pace all the time. So he's easy to be timed, and the right hand over the top. And this is Nicky Holskin we're talking here. We're not talking Callum Smith, George Groves. We're not talking George Groves here, who's a man that's got nice kind of like upper body movement, and he's got a nice jab he can bring up from his waist, brings the left jab up, and he's got a brutal right hand. You know, that if he can drop Carl Froch, he can most certainly hurt Callum Smith and drop Callum Smith, which is a problem for Callum Smith because he's going to use the jab, Smith. And the thing is, Smith is good at long range. When it's long range, Smith is good. When you start to get to mid, To close quarters, Smith on his chest. Smith doesn't know what to do. Example, you saw it 3 or 4 times in a Holskin fight. When Holskin, Smith will voluntarily walk himself to the ropes. He'll throw the jab, and he'll put his back to the ropes. You watch him in the fight, he'll jab, and walk his way to the ropes. And then when he gets himself stuck in the ropes, doesn't know what to do. So he's tucked up like this and kind of cowers away like this. And once Smith's against the ropes and his arms are like this and he's tucked like that, you're going to get nothing back from Callum Smith. Nothing whatsoever. The only time you'll get something back from Callum Smith is if then Smith, if you stop throwing punches, then Smith resets and throws a left hook at you or one to the body. But Smith won't do anything to you when his back is against the ropes. You watch the whole tape or go back and watch the fight. Holskin's best success was when he got on Smith against the ropes, when Smith was moving back against the ropes, and then he didn't know what to do. Didn't quite know what to do, almost looked disorganized on the ropes at times. And Holskin was clipping him with right hands over the top. But see, Holskin's not an experienced fighter that could pick the holes in Smith's defense. So he's very much, there was at one point I saw Smith like putting nice little combos together. But I'm gonna call it for what I think it is. I don't think Smith's a bad fighter, and I think he looked terrible last night. But here's this: I think a man at 6'3", a super middleweight like him, is struggling at the weight. I think it's a kept secret. It's a well kept secret, or maybe it's a well kept secret. Callum Smith is struggling at super middleweight. But really, do you really want to concede that you don't want to face the guys at super middleweight? You really want to go up to light heavyweight? Can you imagine Callum Smith fighting guys like Bivol or Kovalev or Donnie Stevenson or Badu Jack? Could you imagine if Callum Smith actually took that fight instead of the Gale and went and fought Badu Jack? Badu Jack would eat him for breakfast. Jack would just work behind his jab, tuck up tight, work behind his jab, close the range real quickly in Smith, and just rough him up in the ropes. That's it. I don't know if Smith is strong enough at super middleweight anymore. I really don't. And as you get older, it's harder and harder for you to make the weight. So I'm wondering if Smith is struggling at the weight, and we're not getting the best of Callum Smith. That's the only excuse I can have for Callum Smith. But technically, there's a lot of flaws there. And I said it last night, I'll say it again. George Groves can win this fight with one arm. One hand he can beat. Smith, all George has to do when he fights Callum Smith, it's very simple for George Groves. He takes the center of the ring. He waits for Callum to throw the jab. Waits for him to throw the jab. Waits for him to throw the jab. And then he'll drop his hand. And as soon as he drops that left hand, George Groves' right hand will come in. And it's not a question of if. It's when it connects. And then when George catches you with that right hand and he hurts you, he's not going to stand back and look at you. George can finish. And George will finish him off. That's it. I just don't see. You see, even if he's weight drained, okay, so that makes him stronger if he's at the weight. Technically, there's too many flaws there. And some of those flaws have happened because he's been, in my opinion, badly managed. Great management in terms of being unbeaten. Great management in terms of being in a Super 8 tournament, not having to fight Jürgen Bremer. That's fantastic. And somehow getting himself to the final. But I said it last night. I believe Chris Eubank Jr. could beat Callum Smith. Why? Because Callum Smith doesn't know how to deal with the pressure. Callum Smith struggles when a guy's got his back against the ropes. And Eubank will walk Smith down and just launch him on the ropes. I don't think Smith can keep Eubank off him. I really don't. And look at Holskin and this guy, Skoglund. None of those two guys have got the aggressiveness or the work rate of a Eubank. So Eubank will just he will just basically get on Smith's chest and work him. You know what I mean? So I think Smith's been very fortunate. How you doing, Sherry? Good to see you in the room. So I think, in my opinion, I think Callum Smith's a knockout waiting to happen. I think George Groves will end the unbeaten run of Callum Smith. Shortens. I don't see the fight going 12 rounds. If the fight goes 7, it goes a long time, because Smith will drop that guard. He will drop that left hand, and as he drops it, ping, the right hand's going to go over the top. And if not that, you know, Smith will walk himself to the ropes. Smith will walk himself to the ropes. He's not ready. Not ready. You cannot go through boxing not fighting the best fighters, and that's the thing. George Groves is a seasoned pro. When I looked at him as my favorite for the tournament, it was because I felt that George Groves had the experience, and it's experience. Even though he got knocked away, Carl Froch, and he got beaten by Badou Jack. Look at the guys that have beaten Groves. Badou Jack is potentially go on and beat Adonis Stevenson in the light heavyweight division. You could arguably say he beat James DeGale. He smashed up cleverly. Beat DeGale. We could say beat DeGale, right? You could say beat DeGale. And then after DeGale goes up, moves up, beats it cleverly, gets WBO title, and then goes across and now it's going to fight Adonis Stevenson. I think Badou Jack's a very good fighter. So I think George Groves got anything to be ashamed of. Right, so those are my thoughts on Callum Smith. Yes, this is all good, but have you watched Icarus? Let me tell you something. I had Icarus, the beginning of Icarus start in front of on my TV screen today. And then at the back of my mind, I realized if I sit down and watch Icarus, I'm not going to do all these videos. So I'm doing these videos now. And once I do these videos, I'm going to watch Icarus. And after I watch Icarus, I'm going to do my Football Manager. There you go. Okay? Eugene. Right. So, the next thing to talk about now is Daniel Dubois, the development of Daniel Dubois. And I'm going to say Daniel Dubois, and I'm also going to mention in that same breath Anthony Yarde. Both guys are on that development train for different reasons. And I am concerned for Anthony Yarde, but I think the difference between Anthony Yarde and Chamberlain and what's the other guy's name? Ahara Davis, is that this guy is being managed and looked after properly. I'll talk about Yarde first before I go into Dubois. Anthony Yarde has got the looks. He seems to have the punch. He seems to have some ability for people to make a stir about him. But this boxing world, people don't really care. And this is a statement. People don't really care about a fighter once he starts getting beat up and loses. People turn a blind eye and they look for the next fashion. Often. And everyone was raving about Ahara Davis for him to fight Josh Taylor. When he fought Josh Taylor and he lost to Josh Taylor, a lot of people forgot about Ahara Davis. People are quite happy to rush you into fights, but are not happy to support you after you lose that fight. Chamberlain, a lot of people are happy to rush him into the fight against Okoli, but now how many people are going to run and support him as much as they were when he fought the fight? All this stuff about, take heed, watch those two guys, Ahara Davis and Chamberlain. Both guys had achieved very little in the amateur ranks. And both guys now are suffering for it. Ahara Davis is suffering, didn't do great in the amateur ranks, and he got found out when he fought a guy who had better amateur pedigree in the pro ranks. We've seen it with Chamberlain. Chamberlain fought a guy who had more experience in as an amateur, and you've seen it as a pro now come out. So all these guys that have got limited amateur experience and want to fight and act like if they're, and take fights as if they're a pro, meaning like the pros who have had the amateur experience and want to go on the same path, wrong. They shouldn't be doing it. Any amateur, any guy out there who's boxing at the moment and who hasn't won, who fought at the highest level as an amateur, I think, personal opinion, should be you know, they fight, they're learning their trade, they're learning on the job. So they're learning their trade on the job. So you can't expect a guy like Anthony Yarde or O'Hara Davis or Chamberlain or any fighter for that matter who's had limited amateur experience jump into the pro ranks and fight the best fighters in the world. And that's what they seem to be doing. I think Buglioni, if I'm right, Buglioni had far more amateur fights than Yarde, if I'm correct. And they're trying to push that fight on Yarde. I like what Yarde's doing. I like what Yarde's team are doing. They're taking the time with Frank Warren and not rushing into big fights. And I think it's going to happen eventually. Yarde will fight big fights, but he has to fight. He has to have learning fights. They need to learn. They have to build the fighter. Far too often, particularly in the UK, that they don't want to build a fighter. They want quick return. They invest in a fighter, they want quick return. So therefore, there's no building up. There's no, what happened to all those fights you used to have back on the BBC back in the day where a guy would fight from being, you know, a prospect to a contender to a champion? What happened to all that? What happened to the British, Commonwealth, European world? What happened to that route? And along the way, you have a few scares. You may get knocked down. You may get hurt in a fight. You know, you may have an off night. You have to pull it out the bag. What happened to all that stuff? No, you fight a couple of fights. You knock a couple of guys out. Oh, let's get you a world title fight. Ooh, let's get you in against a guy who's got an unbeaten record. Let's make a big fight. No, learn your craft, learn your trade, so you get the right foundation, so that when you get to the top, you can fight the best fighters out there and know that you're ready. All these guys are pushing guys into big fights. Most of the people calling for these big fights, most of them haven't got an understanding or clue of the management and the preparation of a fighter to build a champion. A lot of these guys that are shouting out, oh, you know, this guy should fight this person, that guy should fight that person, they will ruin boxers' careers. And all they do is say, haha, you're not good enough, you're a hype job, and move on to the next person. Is Chris Eubank a hype job? No. What I think has happened, in my opinion, is this another guy, look for it, lacked amateur experience. Learn his trade on the road. Unfortunately, he had his father, Chris Eubank Sr., who was blowing hot air up his ass and was promoting him and saying he's going to do this, that, and the other, and he's going to be better than Floyd Mayweather. When you make statements like that, you also put a light on a fighter, rather than Chris going and learning his trade properly, getting a proper trainer and learning his trade and building up, you know, British, Commonwealth, European. Well, no, you want to fight Billy Joe Saunders. You want to fight Billy Joe Saunders. And the more I look at it, the more I think it's money grabbing. It's money grabbing because it don't make sense. Your son wasn't ready for those fights. You may have thought he was ready. He wasn't ready. You know, technically wasn't ready. So he needed a good trainer, a very good trainer to help him. And even then with a very good trainer, it's how you manage his career. I don't know. You stuck him in with Billy Joe Saunders in a fight that, okay, I didn't get started for 6 rounds. Okay. Well, the second fight you now had with George Groves, what is it? He didn't get started or what? Oh, he wasn't allowed to get started. So, you know, if you had 10 more fights and then fought Billy Joe Saunders, it may have been a different outcome. You may have won. You may not have won. But too early in your career. Too damn early in your career. Again, I go back and say, and this is George Groves, who had great amateur pedigree. I didn't think George Groves should have fought Carl Froch the first fight. I thought that fight was a rushed fight. And it took time for George to recover and heal. And now, as he's had the big fights experience now, you're seeing him actually come into his own. You see? So the building of a fighter and the building of a champion is very important. Now, on the flip side, when you look at guys like Keith Thurman, sorry, Keith, but, you know, this is a guy who's had extensive amateur experience, fought, had the contender and gone and fought through the guys, you know, now champion, top of the hill, has injuries. He's back in May. He's talking about this and that. And this, at this point now, when you're unified champion, everyone's gunning for you. Fight the fights. Fight the fights. Stop the diplomatic talk. Fight the fights. So those are kind of my thoughts on the whole amateur to pro thing. Come on, don't run my boy Keith Thurman down like that, champ. I'm not running him down. You know I got a lot of love for Keith, but it is what it is. You see, that's a guy who's had extensive amateur background, who's been guided nice through the pro ranks, and now is a champion. You can't be playing around no more, man. You've got to fight the lions that are out there. I know you're injured. Get back. You're milking the injury a bit. Get back and get back in. Get there. End of the year, I want to see Keith in a good fight. So it is what it is. And he's a unified champion as well. There's no excuses, barring injury. Yeah. And my final one. So the performance of Anthony Yarde took a few right hands. Something they need to work on. Again, this is a guy that has had very little amateur experience. So when you're sitting on your microphone, you're being an expert and you're talking, oh, Yarde, you know, he's got a lot to prove. And this is a guy has had very few amateur bouts. So when you look at a guy, this is a work in progress. This is a guy that is learning on the job and trying to gain that amateur and pro experience, put it together while climbing the light heavyweight ranks. So don't look at Anthony Yarde like a Kovalev or Roy Jones Jr. or Andre Ward or those type of guys. Forget it. Don't bother. Those guys have got extensive amateur careers. Some of those guys have gone and won Olympic gold medals. Yarde has been nowhere near that level as an amateur. Nowhere near it. I think he won a box cup or a Haringey Cup or an ABA's. Nowhere near that level. So what you're looking at is a work in progress with a guy who's had very few amateur bouts. And I think Yarde should be nowhere near talking light heavyweight world champ. No. He needs to be just taking his time slowly, learning his trade, learning what it's like in a pro rank to deal with certain situations. You had a guy that hit him back quite a few times with the right hand. That's something they have to go back in the gym and correct. When you're going for the trade, you're going for your career and you're knocking guys over, you know, whether you've had many amateur bouts or not, you know, you have to learn how to deal with a guy that takes your best punch. Now, in the amateur ranks, that's if you've had a lot of experience like that, you know how to fight on the fly. You know how to make adjustments and everything. Yarde is one of these guys that he needs to learn. What am I saying? He needs to learn while on the job these experiences, and he can't have the pressure of having to fight a Buglioni and I'm not saying Buglioni will beat him, but when we go back to the amateur experience, it's key. So how they're guiding Yarde, great. But I don't want to see. I'm getting fed up with these commentators saying he's got a lot to prove. No, he hasn't. No one said he's Olympic champion and all this stuff. So Yarde, let him take his time. Let him take his time. And I don't want to hear him talk about I don't want to hear no world title fights for Yarde. You know what? I don't even want to see Yarde anywhere near a British title yet, because that again brings a certain sort of experience necessary. All right. I want to see Yarde. He's got that WBO belt. Let him keep with the WBO, the European belt, and keep gaining experience and keep tracking up and keep building up points against guys who are going to be resistant and are going to give him different challenges. I want to see Yarde fight against guys who are movers, guys who move away from him, because he's very flat-footed. Guys who got fast hands and got a good footwork, because Yarde is very flat-footed, And you kind of wonder, being that flat-footed, will he be able to deal with guys at a high level that can move around the ring? You know, guys who've got better footwork and can outmaneuver him. Very interesting. Things I liked about Yarde. Second fight in a row, I've seen Yarde being backed up against ropes and then landing shots and bursting off the ropes and dropping guys like that. That's nice. Things I didn't like about Anthony Yarde, loading up with the right hand. Like to see him like putting together 3-4 punches to the body, and when he's got a guy hurt, you know, putting combination together. I like to see more of that, more combination work from him rather than looking for the big shot. And also for him to be aware and to understand punches will be coming back at you. And whereas you might say, well, it didn't hurt, one day it will hurt. So get yourself out of bad habits of, you know, just leaving your chin out there to get hit, and try and look at different ways of, you know, get hit that right hand over the top. It could become a problem against the leading fighters in the world. Fighters like Buglioni, who is an experienced fighter now, will cause Yarde some problems. Yarde may be a big puncher, but in this sport, it's not just about being a big puncher. He's also flat-footed, and at the moment, he looks defensively open, and he's moving up the ranks. So it's just something that fight fans need to be aware of. Finally, Daniel Dubois. Much is on the shoulders of this young man. We all know about his amateur pedigree. We all know he can punch. What can he do other than punch? This fight he had against D.L. Jones. Nice to fight a guy who's unbeaten. When you fight a guy that's unbeaten, that is, there are some guys who are ranked and have got unbeaten records, and people talk about them, and have never fought a guy that's been unbeaten. Dubois fought a guy that was unbeaten. I was very impressed with the fact that he fought a guy that was unbeaten. Okay, maybe he's not the best fighter in the world, and at 6 or 7 fights, why would he be fighting the best fighters in the world? But still, he went in there against a guy who tried to close the range down to him, get close, and then swing from the heels in the hope that he might land something. That was his strategy. Guy came in with a different strategy, and for a while, it looked like if Dubois was getting a little frustrated with it. But what I did see, and what I did like to see Dubois, was shooting his shots up, was able to find the uppercut nicely, a nice little body shot inside, very nice from Dubois. So he showed that he's not just a mad, you know, just got crazy knock you out of punches. He actually had some thinking about what he was doing. It was nice to see. And he's only 20 years old, young boy still, not a fully grown man yet. So I was impressed with Daniel Dubois. And 7 fights. Again, he can be fast-tracked a little bit more because he's got the amateur pedigree to kind of, you know, to have to back up himself up with, as opposed to Yarde. But he's still being tracked very nicely. Oh, he should fight Nathan Gorman. Why? Why should he fight Nathan Gorman now? I should fight Nathan Gorman now. So if he gets beat by Nathan Gorman, what are you going to call him, a hype job? No, bad matchmaking. Why does not the promoter or the matchmaker get called a poor matchmaking? Why is it always when guys get beat, they're hype jobs? Why doesn't the matchmaker, hey, useless matchmaker? Boxing's about timing. It's always about timing. Shobes is not convinced about Yarde yet. I can understand that. I'm not ranting for ranting's sake. I'm making very valid points about Thurman. And hey, this Thurman's a guy who I was talking about and interviewing before anybody was talking about Thurman and hyping Thurman up. So I think I'm kind of entitled to say what I'm saying about Thurman. I was talking about Terence Crawford. Before Crawford, no one's paying attention to Crawford. So really and truly, it's not me hyping and ranting and raving. Listen to what I'm saying. Listen to what I'm saying. And be logical about what I'm saying. I'm saying about Thurman that he's a guy that's a unified champion. So everyone's going to be gunning for him. And the welterweight division has become stagnant because Thurman has either been injured or he doesn't want to fight. You can see other guys around that are hungry, that want a chance to fight. Porter wants to fight. Garcia wants to fight. Spence wants to fight. Spencer's fighting regularly, and he's not even a unified champion. Albeit Thurman's been injured. Okay, if that injured, vacate your belts, come back and fight for them later, and let these guys get on with the division. That's not a bad thing. So, you know, it's not one rule for one person and no rule for somebody else. It is what it is. So, right, I think I've said my piece now about Dubois and Yarde. You know, let's take our time with both of those guys. One, because they're particularly young in Dubois, and the other is Yarde, again, limited amateur experience. Just continue to keep having opponents that are going to give him puzzles to work out and continue to develop as a fighter. And not rush him into world title fights, and because the crowd are demanding to fight Buglioni, that he should fight Buglioni. No, move at your own pace. Because when it all goes wrong, those same people pushing you to fight Buglioni won't be there. And we've seen it over and over again in boxing. Right, I'm out here. Next, when I come back, I'll be talking about the big fight coming up at heavyweight, Luis Ortiz versus Deontay Wilder.